All right. So, yep. Tell me in the chat something you are grateful for, a win, celebration, progress. Let's see here. We have Emmy made it to the top 100 of the total mom pitch. Nice. What is that?
It's a pitch contest for moms, obviously, but from like Scotiabank, Women's Initiative, DDC, WEC, like big companies. And we could win $30,000 to, move our business forward. Plus all this training that we get just for being in the top 100. So it's pretty incredible.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, did you want to come on and share about your post, which I loved, by the way, if you're open to that?
I don't really, I mean, it's all pretty self-explanatory. It was one of those things, it was a now or a never kind of a moment. And I couldn't think about doing it in all like the pod way it was presented. It was like, go do this or pack up your suitcase and tuck it away and move on with life. So I've listened to you for the last however many weeks say the safest space, everyone will hold you as they should, and listen and encourage and all those things. And I just kept being, oh, the quiet little mouse in the corner, like, oh, this is a really great idea. And I so love it. And I so think it's important. And Lord love a duck, it is all of service. And there I sat quietly. So I got a little loud today and decided to write the post.
I love
And
it.
I leapt off the cliff.
Yes. And the wings have come out. And now
Yeah,
you're
right. Here's hoping. Here's
that's
hoping.
so I'm so happy for you and proud of you, and I love that you shared. And you're totally right. For all of us, this is uh, the safest place to share. So thank you,
You're welcome.
and thank
And
you for
thank you for everyone who encouraged and listened and read all the way to the bottom.
brilliant. And that screenshot you shared of
Yeah.
how long you've been thinking about this. Yeah,
A
thank you,
long time.
David. Do you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I ordered. I think I shared it here. I had published the Alchemist Journal. I now have 18 physical copies. I'm not going to hold them all up, but I got back from my 2 weeks of traveling, and they were here, and it just feels like super amazing. There were several different businesses firing on several different fronts, and so that one feels, it's I've heard the phrase "book of you" for another book, but it is a book of you. It's like I write the framework. People get to write in and change their lives, and it's gonna be awesome. It'll be
That's so cool.
amazing.
How can I get a copy of one of those?
Barnesandnoble.com, or maybe I bring one for you to Toronto in a
Yes,
few
please.
few weeks.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. Okay, let me jump in. So I have a shorter training for you today, and then we're going to do more Q&A, more conversation afterwards. And thank you to everyone who responded to my word you need help right now. We're going to do a lot of that. So let's bum, 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 do this and that. Here we go. So today, today's conversation is called The Elevator. And we'll talk about how to leverage the experience of your first cohort to elevate the delivery and marketing for your future ones. So, if you watch the training, I led you through a thought process that I love called the Netflix formula. I want to share it with you again today, super quick, and then get into some ideas of how to do this for yourself. And even though you haven't launched yet, it's important to think about these things from the beginning, so that as you progress with your business and with your coaching, it gets easier and easier. So the Netflix special formula is something I've developed by watching stand-up comedians. So Sebastian Maniscalco, as an example, is one of my favorites. If you like stand-up comedy on Netflix, he has I think at least three specials now. We saw him a few weeks ago here in Toronto with 20,000 people. So he's the type of person that can fill giant arenas. And the way him and like the Jerry Seinfelds and all of them, people with big platforms who have Netflix specials, they don't sit down and write a script. They don't sit down and just write a bunch of jokes and prepare and rehearse and do this giant stadium tour. what they actually do is they'll go to small little clubs like the Comedy Store in LA or any small club in their town, and they write a bunch of jokes and they literally test them. I've actually seen this process. It is wild. Like they'll stand on stage with sometimes their phone or a notepad and they'll say a joke, and depending on the instant reaction, they'll say, "Oh, that was a good one," and then they'll do another one. "Oh, that sucked," and they'll cross it off. I had that privilege of actually going to the Comedy Store, which is one of the biggest comedy clubs in the world, where a lot of these people actually hang out all the time. It's in Hollywood, and I watched this process. So this is Sebastian at Comedy Store, and the instant feedback allows them to take their best jokes and turn them into sets, and they keep testing and iterating and improving. And then they take their best sets and turn them into a show, and they start touring, and they keep iterating and making it better and better and better. They don't sit down and try to make it perfect up front, because it's actually a waste of time. You can't figure that out without the feedback of your clients. And it's the same with a coaching program. You can't sit down today and say, "I know exactly what the next whatever many weeks of my program is going to look like," because you can't know without the iteration and the feedback of your clients to figure out where they need support, where they're struggling, what works, what doesn't work. So your program becomes a continuous work in progress. And progress allows you to actually take action over trying to make it perfect. And perfect is your enemy. Not perfectionism, which is another challenge we all probably have, but the idea of making it perfect up front will actually make it bad. It will make your program worse than it could be because you don't have the benefit of feedback. So, and on the comedy side, once they've mastered what their whole show is, that's when they film the Netflix special. But it's almost as if they figured out their greatest hits. They've iterated a lot of times. So what you see on TV or on Netflix isn't a one-hit wonder type thing. It's them spending days and days and days iterating. So you think, "Oh man, they're so funny. Every joke hits," but that's because they've figured it out from the beginning. And then when they've done a tour, then they start touring again, writing new jokes and doing the same thing over and over again. And we can all do the same thing. And your Netflix special of your coaching program could be an online course. It could be a book, a keynote speech, or all of the above, because it's field tested. So one of the cool things about doing online coaching like this is that as you're iterating and as you're creating your better and better version, it will also help you create other things. So for anyone who wants to write a book in the future, this is a great way to write a book. If you want to create an online course, this is a great way to think of that too. Or develop keynotes and become a public speaker or professional speaker, same kind of thing. It's the same process over and over again. So let's talk about a few ways to think about iterating. And then we'll do some Q&A. So the first one is what I call your greatest hits, which is looking for the patterns in the answers when you ask the magic question. So last time we talked about the magic question. You've heard me say it every single time, every single week. And the first part of it is what's been most useful so far. It is super important to see what answers come up because those become your greatest hits. So when you do cohort 2 and cohort 3 and cohort 4 and eventually a book and an online course or whatever else you want to do, those comments are golden for you, especially if there's a lot of repeated comments of things that really resonated for people. And guess what? In the future, when you're doing more marketing to build a bigger audience, not now, but in the future, those comments become the guideposts for what your content can be. So if you want to attract more people in the future, so let's say you shared 10 ideas in one of your calls and 3 of them were like, "Oh man, this is amazing stuff." Those 3 ideas could become a Facebook post or Instagram post or an email that gets sent out because you know that it resonates with the right people and it will attract more people like them in the future. The second concept is what I call mind the gaps, which is looking for the patterns in the second part of the magic question, which is where do you need more clarity? So if some of your group members share a same question or lack of clarity with something you've taught, that gives you the opportunity to iterate your current program and then your future cohorts, right? So you'll see today, and I'm being very meta with this, I'm going to be covering some stuff that came up in the where do you need help right now question from last week's module. That wasn't originally a part of today's conversation, but I'm co-creating even right now with you, even though this isn't the first time I've done Odyssey, right? So this is a never-ending, getting better and better process for all of us. The third is to experiment with formats. So formatting, meaning how do you deliver your thing? How do you deliver your coaching, your programs? And I wrote in brackets here how Odyssey started. The first time we ever did Odyssey, it was different than this structure, where it was a one-day event, like a full day event on Zoom, where I taught everything, and then there was implementation over a few weeks. And that was how I did it the first time. And then we did a version of this where there wasn't any pre-recorded training up front. It was all kind of training in the live calls. And now for all of you, there's a training video first, and then more conversation on these calls. So we're constantly iterating too, and looking for feedback from people in terms of how to make it better and better and better. And I think experimentation is so important for all of us, because that's how you'll be able to get more feedback and figure out how to make things better. And then I call this the unicorn question, which is after your cohort is over, you can ask your members for feedback and ask them what they loved about the experience and how to make it even better for future members, because they'll have the best feedback for you over and over and over again. And feedback from that perspective is probably some of the most valuable that you'll ever get, because you don't know what you don't know about the experience. And getting that feedback will help you make it better and better and better. Not to say that it's bad, by the way. So even your first time iterating, and Brian, I'll get to your question in a second. The first time iterating, you are creating an MVP version of your program. It will be your worst version because things will keep getting better, but it's not bad. I just want, when you're comparing future cohorts to the current cohort, I don't want you to have, because that can bring up imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. You're co-creating with your first founding members to make it even more custom for them. So they're getting the unfair advantage of the customization. And Brian, I call it the unicorn question because sometimes when I ask it, I'll say, if this was unicorns and rainbows and sparkles of a program for you, it was a program that was perfectly designed for you, what happened that matched your unicorn version of this, and what would you like to see that's different to create a unicorns, rainbows, and sparkles program for you? And then the help question. So I asked this last time, and I want all of you to ask it to your people too. So whenever you have members in your cohort to ask, and you don't have to ask it once, it could be multiple times, but where do you need the most help right now? And you can ask it halfway through kind of thing to figure out where people need support. And that will help you, again, customize delivery of future sessions, but also future cohorts. And speaking of the help question, I want to answer some of your questions that came up in that post. So the first one was scheduling for a May launch. This is a very sort of simple structure, but this Friday, I have the entire day for Odyssey where I'm going to be spending the entire day editing. So because it happens to be a holiday, I love holidays for work. I've taken the entire day for Odyssey. So some of you I've already started editing and asking questions. I want to help you finish off your hand raisers and your love letters this Friday. And if you want to launch in May, my suggestion is to start using your hand raisers on April 19th, which is next Tuesday. And I typically like a 2 to 3 week window between starting to ask that question. And then it gives you 2 to 3 weeks for the dream conversations. And then that way you have enough time to answer any objections or support people. And then the last thing I put here that's super important. Let's say you choose, I'm just making up a date. Let's say you choose May 5th as your start date. And it's a 12-week program. You don't have to stop selling on May 5th. This is a huge sort of revelation, that I had, where um, you're probably going to have people joining right up to the last second because that's how psychology works. And then you may have people who feel like it's too late. But as if you design the first session to be a bit of an introduction and getting people to know each other, and you can still market your program after it launches. The way I like to do it is that up until the second week of delivery, then it kind of feels like it's too late. So by the third session, so if you're doing a weekly coaching call, by the third week, that's when I would cut it off, simply because it may be a challenge for people to catch up. But I like the idea of not stopping when you start, and that may help add 1 or 2 or 3 more people after you've started, because now you have the momentum going. Joanne asked about following up to the gifted time concept. So Joanne, this is how I would do it. And again, I love simplicity, and this works so well. So let's say you have a session with someone, and when you do any of these kinds of things, I always say, make it all about them. And then after the session, you can email them with, first thanking them for their time, giving them a replay. If you let's say you did it on Zoom, you could record it and say, here's the replay of our conversation, and then ask the magic question, which is, would you like some help? So when you're talking to them, you'll probably take them through the dream conversation as the methodology, and then they may say, my dream is this, and my obstacles are these things over here. And then you can literally say, would you like some help with, and then fill in the blanks with their language. So I'll try to make one up. So let's say you're in the nutrition space, and the person says, or health space, and the person says, my dream is to have 8 hours of rested sleep, like a perfect night's sleep, because I have insomnia. I'm just making something up. And the kryptonite is, I struggle with getting to bed on time, or whatever their struggles are. You can say then, would you like some help having 8 hours of restful sleep and getting through your insomnia? And that's how you end the email. So the most likely thing that will happen, because you're using their exact dream and kryptonite, is a response that says yes. And then once they say yes, you make them an offer to join your cohort, but specifically explain how your program is the bridge from where they are to where they want to be. So even though now you're finally talking about your opportunity or your invitation and sending them a link to your love letter, you still customize that language about them. So you can say, in our 8-hour restful sleep program, or whatever your thing is called, I'll help you get to this place and overcome these obstacles, and here's how I can help. And then you talk about your program. So that's how I would respond to any of the gifted time stuff. And this is where I really wanted to have a conversation. So I think Tanya and Mike and a few others commented on the idea of fear or anxiety bubbling up when it comes to launching. So I'm going to take the slides off here for a sec. Okay. So if you feel fear around the concept of launching, write the word me in the chat. I had a feeling. Okay, so who was me before Sunday, says Susan. Interesting. Okay, so actually, Susan, why don't you come on first?
Help yourselves and your son.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, because we had the unplanned cohort. So we had days to complete it. It started Sunday. We crammed everything in. We tested what our first class was going to be, and we thought it was going to be magnificent. Like we were high-fiving each other before bed Saturday, and exactly what you said is we tested and about 50% landed. But we were really gracious with ourselves. We just right off the call, we said, wow, we did it. Like it launched. And then, as you know, we offered people, we said, if you want to quit, no questions asked after the first class, we will give a full refund, no obligation. So the win was nobody has quit. And we've gained 3 more families because of what you said. Don't close it off, right? There were people who were away on the weekend and they went, oh, I've missed it. And we said, no, you haven't. We can send you the first recording. So I was terrified. The whole time I've been online with you, I've been terrified of starting our first cohort and launch. And so Band-Aid is ripped off. Like we're in it now and we're already seeing how to make it better.
Thank you, first of all, for leading by example. And I think I want to share some philosophy and then some ideas of how to get through this, because whenever there's something big like this, we're all going to experience some kind of fear, some kind of anxiety. And in anything, I mean, for all of us on our journeys, the fear doesn't actually go away. And this is not meant to it's not negative news. It's actually good news. And here's why I think it's good news. When you develop a different relationship with fear, you can dance with it in a different way, and it doesn't have a stranglehold on you at the same time. And it also, it's like if you were driving a car, who's holding the steering wheel? Like you can have fear in your passenger seat and it's still you. And part of this is understanding that fear is a specific use of your imagination. So there's a fun game I like to play with people, like all of us. And the game is this. I'll ask, do you believe you use your imagination today as an adult as much as you did as a child? And whenever I do this, most people say no. I was way more imaginative as a child. I was way more creative, even using the word creativity. And I like to say I call bullshit, because I actually think we use it more as adults. We just call it stress. We call it anxiety. We call it fear. And the only difference between when we were a kid and today is that as a kid, we had no preconceived notion of negative outcomes. Everything was a positive outcome. So we would use our imagination and everything was like excitement and positivity. And now our imagination creates outcomes that hurt us. But it's all future based. It doesn't actually exist. It's not in the present. And you know this when you start with the phrase, what if? So we might say, well, what if this doesn't work? What if I fail? What if someone says something weird about me? What if I don't look good? And that's your imagination. So part of this journey is reclaiming your childhood gift of coming up with a positive outcome. Like, what if you actually win? What if it works out? What if everything happens the way you want to? And that reframe for me has been so useful because I realize it's all made up. Like, what is fear? Fear to me is a made up version of the future. Like unless you're standing in front of a tiger right now, so there's a present danger of some kind, the fears you have are an elaborate idea of what could potentially happen in the future. And it's there to protect us, which is important, but you can override that. And action is the way to override it. And if you all know Tim Ferriss, who's a famous author and podcaster, he has a concept called fear setting, which I love, which is the opposite of goal setting. So we like to set goals, but the way he does things is to say, literally, what is the worst thing that could happen? And let me imagine that it actually does happen. Then what? And realizing it's actually not that as bad as I think. I'm not going to die. So for all of you, I promise if you launch your program, you're not going to die. There's a very low statistical probability of death. So let's start there. And then what else could happen? And um, here's what I know will happen. You will have people who don't sign up. 100% you will have people who don't sign up. And that's often the fear. And it's like, wait a minute. But they're not saying no, go F yourself, you're an idiot and a loser. They're saying, I'm not ready right now. And if you shift from being transactional to being relationship based, and the idea is you're going to nurture relationships, because there are people who, maybe even some of you who signed up for Odyssey that have maybe been following me for years. And I may have presented other invitations in the past and you didn't say yes. And I did not give up on you. Because at some point you were going to be, Renata, you're the perfect example. Renata, can you unmute for a sec if possible?
Hey, Giovanni.
So when you joined, how long have you been in my world?
For years and years, I it was just like you said, it was not the right time. It was not, it was not that I enjoyed what I received from you, but it was not the right time for me. So when the stars aligned, that's when I signed up for the first one was Dream Client Attraction, I think.
Yep.
And then I joined the Academy last year, and the rest is history. But I was one of those people who was in your list for years and years.
Exactly. And treating it from, and thank you, Renata, and treating it from a place of relationship, and not like, if this person says no right now, they're dead to me. You never want to have that feeling. And I think it always, for this kind of context, it boils down to a fear of rejection. So there's like some deep core fears that we all have, rejection, abandonment type stuff. So we're almost afraid to ask, because if the person says no, it'll trigger that kind of stuff. And I've felt it a million times. I know what that feels like. And I had 20 years ago, and I'm struggling to remember who taught me this. I just thought it was such a brilliant framework. It was a sales framework, but what they said is they called it the catch-up story. So imagine, let's make up a team. Imagine you're on a baseball team, like a amateur baseball team, and you finished your game and you go to a diner and there's like 10 of you sitting around this giant table. Your whole team is there, and the waitress comes and takes orders and like, yeah, burger, I'll take a burger. Okay, everyone wants a burger. Perfect. With fries. Perfect. And then she says, would you like ketchup with that, to the first person? And the person says, yes. The second person says, yes, I want ketchup. The third person says, no, I don't want ketchup. And the waitress says, what do you mean? No, I don't want ketchup. But I made this ketchup. Like, this is the best ketchup in the world. No, I just don't feel like having ketchup. But I don't understand. Why are you saying no to me? Right. So the idea is, some people are going to say yes. Some people are going to say no. And if you get detached from the outcome and realize not everyone's going to say yes, and it's not about you, it's about them. And they may not be ready. They may have their own fears. They probably do. So part of this is to create buyer safety for them, that creates seller safety for you. And the only way through is to take a step. And like, even if you like launching and having nothing happen at all is still a win, because you're learning. And then you can iterate and do it again. And I promise that when you stay consistent with this stuff, that's where all victory happens. That's where all success happens. You have it, but it's about taking the steps forward. And that's why we do this in a group like this. If you try to do it on your own, and maybe you have in the past, if you don't have a support structure like this, it gets infinitely harder. But we're all here for each other, and you're not going to be judged at all. You're not going to be criticized. If you make a mistake, it's totally cool. If you don't launch, it's totally fine. We're here, like, no matter what, you've already won, because you're here and you're already transforming. I suggest taking the steps, and even if you make mistakes, that's the only way forward and through this stuff. I want to hear from a bunch of you. Jenna, are you able to come on?
Yes, I got the COVID. I'm in the bed.
No problem. First of all, can you share your win that you shared in campus? Because I thought that.
Yeah, I wrote so I got a sale from just the email. My tendency is to hop on a sales call, I guess just from training. Like, hey, met you at the thing. Do you want to hop on a sales call if you're interested in working with me? But I sold her in 2 emails, which was super great because she had already decided she wanted to work with me. She just needed the details. But I also wrote a really well written email. I reread it after doing our training, and I was able to point out what I was doing right, like illuminating the facts of what they need to know, having previous client shares. So it was a really well written email. So now I know that email sells, but this time I didn't have to do a sales call, which is awesome.
Brilliant. Love that. And your advice for people who may be afraid of taking steps,
Taking steps.
like launching their program or
Oh yeah, just do it. Someone's waiting for you. I'm like I'm full with clients right now. I'm a little overwhelmed. So now I'm like, okay, time for a group. But if I would just sit on my hands and try to make it perfect, then like this woman who had a breakthrough in my talk wouldn't have had that breakthrough and then have the opportunity to know that she can work with me and that I do this very specific transformation. Like, to keep your gifts hidden in a bushel because you're scared, it's just not a good reason. Like, someone wants what you have no matter what level it's at right now, because that's just the divine universe in action. Like, the exact thing you're doing for your exact ideal client, they're looking for you. So you just are letting them know.
I love that. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you for all the love, people.
Geeta has some context on fear.
Hi. Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that you said, but I experienced this absolutely paralyzing fear while in this group, despite it being the most supportive and wonderful group to belong to. The context, I guess I want to bring up because I had to push through my own stuff that came up. And in interacting even with a few people in this group, I noticed that when I was in that fear-triggered state, my capacity to interact effectively was compromised. Then it left me with shame, right? So for the few people that I did interact and I misspoke, misstated, whatever, I do want to apologize. But the context, what I wanted to bring forward was, when fear is that kind of, oh, what if somebody rejects me or doesn't like what I do? But then there's a fear which comes from very young childhood, and it shows up in your nervous system. It doesn't live in your head, right? And when fear is triggered in your nervous system, thinking through it doesn't work. And that's all I wanted to say, because some people may be experiencing this and then feeling shame around, wow, I can't push my way through it. And I couldn't. I had to do things that allowed me to transform the fear. And so I couldn't think my way out of it.
Right.
So that was all I wanted to say.
A very powerful resource for that. When that happens, it will happen to all of us. And I have the privilege of living with my partner, Stephanie, who's, besides other stuff, like a brain and neurology expert. And, you know, our nervous system has essentially two modes. One is called parasympathetic, and which is like rest and digest. And the other one is sympathetic, which is the fear response. And when you have the fear response, your body is shifting its state to get ready to either run or fight or any of that kind of stuff. And it's very hard to be creative. It's very hard to be able to think rationally when you're in that state, because your body is primed for physical things like fighting or running. And the easiest technique is learning breathing techniques that actually shift you back to parasympathetics. Like one thing that actually my trainer taught me, which is amazing, is that if you inhale quickly and exhale slowly, you can actually control your heart rate and slow it way down. And when you're in fight or flight, your prefrontal cortex, like the part of your brain that makes you kind of shuts down into your primitive brain, which is the animal version of you to fight. And if you want to, whenever there's stress, if you can get back to that real you, it helps you overcome these kinds of things.
Yeah, the breathing definitely works in the moment. Some of the journey had to be actually just resolving stuff at a deeper level so that the trigger moved into the realm of being more readily controlled,
Yep.
where it can be quite out of control. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank
And yeah, thanks for the time.
Rochelle has a reframe.
Very often, I love when you said our imagination. Do we use our imagination? Because I also say, no, I don't have a creative molecule in my body. But you're right, we are very creative for the negative and the gloom and doom. So whenever I work with clients and they're really into fear, and they always say, what's the worst that can happen? And I really say, I think that's the worst question, because we connect to a subconscious reaction to fear, and we start creating fear. We start creating the worst. So when somebody says that with me and to me, I say, cancel, cancel, cancel. And then I do say, what's the best that can happen? We're doing this because we have an idea of what's the best, especially you, Gia. I mean, you want to change, the world, the planet. The world is already too small for you. You're up to like the planet. So when you're thinking of something, we're thinking about what's the best that can happen. And when we start using our imagination for the best, it makes the hugest difference. And the other thing that I also do is fear has a physiology to it. So one of the things that, Tony Robbins is so big on this, you have to change your physiology and it breaks the fear. So, whatever we need to do. So do I take a walk? Do I do, I don't do a jumping jack if you put an Uzi to my head, except when I'm panicked. When I'm panicked, I'm jumping jacking. I can jumping jack. Because it's really funny, because if I jump jack in my apartment, the neighbor upstairs will probably like, what the hell's going on? And if I probably told her I'm panicked, she would probably say, jump to your heart's content. So there are the little things that we can do. What is the internal dialogue? What's the best that can happen? And I have it on my sticky pad on my computer if I'm getting freaked out. What's the best that can happen? And, what do we need to do to change our physiology? And that's where Dr. Stephanie is brilliant, because she'll give us the tips on how to do it from a physiological perspective.
First of all, thank you for all of that. And you should do some jumping jack videos for. I have a question.
Or, the other thing is really helpful if any of us have pets. I mean, I always say, I rescued my dogs. Baloney, they rescued me. They are the most comforting, amazing, loyal, whatever. So I guess for my other thing is spend more time with your pets. They're just stupendous.
Let me ask all of you a question. How many of you think that I am a anxious person? Raise your hand if you think. How would you describe my state or energy when you see me on these calls? Thank you for all these awesome words. Would it surprise you that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, my anxiety was so bad, my panic attacks were so bad. At one point, I thought it was a heart attack. I called 911. I thought I was dying. So the reason I'm sharing this is that over the past 10 to 15 years, I've been on a quest to understand what I now call identity engineering. The idea that we can create our future selves, we can shift our personalities, we are not static. And part of the challenge that many of us will face, many of you will face, is confronting your identity of who you are in relationship to launching your program. So if some of the stuff that might come up is, well, I've tried stuff in the past and it didn't work, so why is it going to work for me now? Or any kind of language like that related to your past. And I can tell you with confidence that you can actually change who you are to become a version of you that will have a successful program launch. And to me, that could be one of the biggest nuggets of this entire program, of the idea of becoming the person who can make your program a reality, becoming the person that create the transformations for your clients, becoming the person that can have a very successful program. And I, for my own experience and on my own journey, if that's the one thing I could bottle up and share with people, it's that. It's like, I don't know if any of you would have known me during my, let's say, real estate days or before that. It was deeply struggling. Like, I was contemplating suicide in 2008 when my first marriage failed. And at the time I had zero hope and my business failed. And I was like, it felt like rock bottom for me. And it was challenging. And the beauty of this whole experience for me is that I'm in, most of the time, it's not 100%, but I am in control of my state. And I am operating now at a place of becoming the person who can make the dreams come true. Like, I did an exercise 10 years ago called creating my to-be list, where I wrote a list of all of the characteristics I loved about myself, all the ones I didn't, and the opposite of those things. And then I had this master list, and I've now become that person. And now I'm actually recreating that list again, because I want to become the person who can make my even bigger dreams come true in the future. And we can all do this. And you're here because I believe in you, all of you. And I want to see the impact that you can have on other people. It's not about us. It's about the people who are, in Jenna's words, the people who are basically waiting for us to reach out to them and say, hey, I can help you. Because if you're feeling fear, imagine how much fear they have. David, can you share what you just wrote here?
Yeah, it's actually, I wish I could say I wrote it. I didn't, but it's a meme on the internet that says it should say you are under no obligation to be the same person you were a year ago, a month ago, or even 15 minutes ago. You have the right to change, no apologies. And helping people understand that, right? We're surrounded by all of the things that are our past, and we look around and go, well, these are facts, this is real. And in fact, it is changeable. We respond to the environment. If we change the environment, we will respond to that. It's the basis of what I teach at Coachville. It's how I coach people around. I've seen it over and over and over again. And it's incredibly powerful. You just have to immediately get past this, I have to be this way, or I am this way, when it's not who you want to be.
Yeah, love it. I love all of your shares too in the chat. Thank you all. It is the end of today's session. So if you have questions about this, please share them into the discussion in campus. Friday, I will be editing more of your love letters and hand raisers. And then next week we can meet again and continue this conversation. So thank you all. This has been so much fun. And oh, Ronnie, yeah, thank you for bringing this up. Ronnie, can you come on for a second?
Hello.
Okay, so one of your ideas was to have like work sessions, and I'm happy to, the simplest way, because there's going to be a lot of different calendars and people's times, and so you can all connect with each other in campus and come up with dates and Zoom links and like work sessions to support each other through helping each other with this stuff. So I'm totally fine with that happening. I think it would be great.
Yeah, and it may be a simple doodle that we put up there and everybody just responds.
Yeah, love that. Brilliant idea, Ronnie. Thank you for that. And thank you all. See you all very soon. Bye-bye.